Hello everyone! Welcome back to the channel, The Bold and Beautiful Always, and today we've got something really exciting for you. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Let's jump right in. Dr. Liam Spencer miraculously cures Liam Spencer of his terminal cancer in Bold and the Beautiful. Grace Buckingham's name. But was all of this a con? And was Liam's cancer fabricated by Grace? We'll show you how and why Grace might have started a fake cancer scheme, no matter how crazy it sounds. I know there have been some questions about Liam's condition, really kind of starting since Grace began getting those wonky calls and texts, but now this really has legs. This whole brain tumor thing might have been a long con to score a big payday, and Bill Spencer might have just gotten taken for $1 million. It's not like he can't afford it, and she could have asked for a lot more, to be honest. But let's get started. I have numerous receipts for you. The Beautiful and Bold. Finn looks suspicious when Bill informed Finn Finnegan on Friday that they had received Liam's MRI and that the tumor had disappeared as a result of this experimental surgery. Finn Finnegan appeared to be extremely suspicious. There are clear margins, meaning there shouldn't be any regrowth. Finn, on the other hand, stated that it was not only a medical miracle for Liam but also making medical history due to the fact that this was an inoperable brain tumor, a cancerous tumor that had supposedly disappeared. Finn appeared shocked and almost suspicious. Since Grace hasn't had many episodes in the past, I went back and looked at every one of them today, and honestly, I didn't think it would turn out to be a fake illness. And I'm going to show you guys these warning signs. Naturally, the question is whether she was successful in faking Liam's cancer if she did. And was this a chance crime or a more sinister one? Timeline and suspicious events surrounding Liam Spencer's cancer diagnosis and treatment. So, all of this started because Liam got into a big fight with Bill and felt dizzy. That was the 2nd of April. Also, it would have been interesting if it had started on April Fool's Day, so I actually looked back. But it was April 2nd. Nevertheless, on April 3rd, that is when Liam fell. He fell to the ground and hit his head on the coffee table, resulting in a massive pool of blood. He then, crawled outside. Steffi Forrester came across Liam. She transferred him to the hospital. That was when Grace first got involved with Liam's medical condition on April 4th. I believe that most of what had taken place up until that point was legitimate. Grace operated on Liam for a brain bleed after he fell flat in the emergency room. And that absolutely was medically legit. Then it was a couple weeks later on April 18th, that was the next time we saw Grace. She also informed Finn and Bridget Forrester that Liam had brain cancer that was inoperable. Bold and the Beautiful, where is the oncology team? So the question is, did Grace see a little something in Liam's head when she did the surgery, or she saw nothing but the brain bleed and then she thought about it for a couple of weeks and was like, yeah, I'm going to do something here. Grace mentioned that there was a neuro team, but we've never seen them. Liam's cancer case has been totally managed by Grace, who's a cardiologist instead of an oncologist. All of those are warning signs. Then a few days later on April 21st, Grace made a call in front of Bridget confirming Liam's diagnosis. That could be a big fat call to nobody, but just was a performance for Bridget. Then Grace was off screen for an entire month while he has this scary cancer. Gone for a month. On May 21st, she was there at the time and informed Liam that there were treatments that might give him more time. Grace also mentioned chemotherapy and radiation, urging Liam to take these treatments as soon as possible. Despite the urgency and seriousness of the cancer, we persevered all the way from May 21st to July 3rd. Way more than a month, like almost 6 weeks until she was back. Grace then informed Finn that Liam absolutely required this treatment. Grace began receiving the odd calls and texts at the same time. Bold and the Beautiful, plot twist planned? Therefore, on July 4th, Finn informed Grace that he was aware that she was experiencing stress due to her ex-husband and her daughters. To be honest, I'm not even 100% sure if the plot of Bold and the Beautiful started out as a fictitious illness or if it started out as real and decided to switch to a twist because fans complained. All they were doing was redoing Eric Forrester's cancer story. Because I don't trust Bold to know what they're doing from the start. And I definitely have seen them change directions. I think we all have. So Liam was shot by Luna Nozawa and he came into the ER on July 9th. Grace tried to perform the surgery on Liam, but Finn said, "No, it can't wait." Additionally, he brought Liam to the surgery. She didn't like that. Grace wound up lopping off the rest of Sheila Carter's gunshot toe that Luna hit. You know, taking her down to 8 little piggies. Grace, on the other hand, insisted that the nurses keep her informed about Liam even as Sheila underwent surgery. Grace had a laser-like focus on Liam. Bold and the Beautiful, Grace takes a turn? That carried over onto the July 10th episode when she was again asking about Liam. The following day, on July 14th, Grace visited Liam for an examination while he was still recovering from the gunshot wound surgery. Hope Logan and Steffi Forrester were there and Bridget joined, but Grace first nudged Hope and Steffi to step out of the room while she checked on Liam. And then Grace convinced Bridget to go be with her family. It was very odd that she sent another doctor away so she could pretend to be with him alone. Once Grace was alone with Liam, she was frantic in saying that they can't lose him. Grace probably was concerned about losing this payday at that point. Bold and the Beautiful, mystery doctor doesn't participate? Grace listened in on Bill's conversation with Liam, who was still unconscious, on July 15th and learned that he would do anything to save him. That was prior to Liam's gunshot surgery recovery. So, Grace eavesdropped and then she came and told Bill about this amazing experimental surgery and that it was very expensive, but it could save Liam's life. And of course, Bill jumped at it. She came up with this perfectly. Then, Grace transferred Liam out of the hospital over to the private clinic. Grace and this unidentified doctor then underwent this procedure on July 16th to remove Liam's inoperable tumor. Although we never saw that man touch Liam, this other doctor was supposedly a specialist who she had flown in for the surgery. Grace was the one who requested the scalpel and cut into Liam's head. Okay, so that concludes the timeline for all of these episodes. But since Grace was only on Bold and the Beautiful here and there and not consistently, it was kind of hard to get the big picture. But then when I went today and I looked at her whole episode list and I went through the recaps of every episode to make this list, I was like, huh? Okay, thanks. Analyzing Grace Buckingham's role and possible motives in the alleged fake cancer scheme. Another item can be found here. Because Liam had a history of concussions, which we've seen over the years. He fell on the plane on his way to Australia, hit his head again, and that's when he started having trouble remembering everything about Adam and Eve and Quinn Fuller. So, yes, the dizziness that day at Bill's could have been caused by a previous injury or something else. That is simple to explain. Maybe Liam was having an anxiety attack, a panic attack from the stress of that terrible argument with Bill, and that's why he got dizzy and just lost it for a second, and Liam bashed his head on Bill's coffee table, and that created an opportunity for a woman who's desperate for money. I think Grace started to see dollar signs after she had surgery for the brain bleed. I mean, this could have been a totally imaginary tumor in Liam's head that Grace completely invented. Or she made a mountain out of a molehill, and it wasn't necessary for there to actually be anything in his head, it could just be some scar tissue or something else. In addition, as you may recall, Liam has been exhibiting serious symptoms over the past few months. Those ran from the time that Grace said he had brain cancer up until this miracle surgery. However, I can also explain that to you. The Beautiful and the Bold, drug madness. We saw Liam taking the medication Grace had given him a few times during this time. And on Bold and the Beautiful, everybody gets their meds from the hospital pharmacy, not the CVS down the street from them, because that's where Hope goes to get Beth's allergy meds. This has been seen before. I especially remember it. And Liam showed the bottles. So, I think Grace used medication bottles that had his name and cancer medications, pain relief medications, stuff that would be common for somebody with that condition. But I think if this is true, and again, this is not a spoiler, I'm thinking this is what's going on here. My very strong theory is that. But I think inside Liam's medication bottles were different meds, ones that actually caused the symptoms of weakness and lethargy and dizziness. There's plenty of meds that Grace could have used off-label to cause Liam's symptoms. For instance, if you have normal blood pressure, taking a blood pressure medication can make you feel dizzy. It can exhaust you. There's lots of drug options that could be used to cause what we were seeing with Liam. Bold and the Beautiful, Grace switches brain scans? If this really is a scam, I think Grace drugged Liam with pills that wouldn't kill him, but would cause alarming symptoms that would mimic cancer progression to push towards Grace getting a miracle cure payday. She might have planned all along to pitch some sort. It all began like many tragedies do on The Bold and the Beautiful, quietly, subtly, without sirens, just a whisper of dizziness after an argument that spiraled into something far more sinister than anyone could have anticipated, and now, with Liam Spencer miraculously cured of his so-called terminal brain cancer thanks to the alleged brilliance of Dr. Grace Buckingham, everyone should be celebrating, but instead, the air is thick with paranoia, disbelief, and an overwhelming sense that something deeply deceptive is unfolding beneath the surface, because as miraculous as this medical victory may seem on paper, the question that now grips everyone in Los Angeles is this: was Liam's cancer real, or did Grace Buckingham just orchestrate the most elaborate and unethical con in soap opera history for a payday she never earned and a lie she wove so tightly around a man who didn't even know he was being manipulated from the very beginning, because now with Finn Finnegan raising his eyebrows in clinical disbelief, and Bridget Forrester combing through medical files with increasing confusion, the dominoes are beginning to topple and they are pointing to one woman at the center of it all, Grace, whose motivations remain as murky as her recent past, especially since it all started on April 2nd when Liam, reeling from a heated confrontation with Bill, grew dizzy and collapsed, striking his head on the coffee table and leaving a pool of blood on the hardwood floor, and from that moment, we were swept into a cascade of events that only now seem to form the early strands of what may have been an elaborate hoax, because Grace, who just happened to be available, swooped in on April 4th to perform emergency surgery on Liam for a brain bleed, a legitimate procedure by all counts, but it was in the quiet aftermath of that operation that suspicions should have begun to rise, as Grace, who is a cardiologist, not a neurologist or an oncologist, suddenly became the sole authority on Liam's neurological health, and it wasn't until April 18th that she told Bridget and Finn that Liam had an inoperable brain tumor, news that devastated them all, yet the revelation arrived with no verifiable scans shown to anyone but Grace herself, no consultation from an oncology team, and most curiously, no consistent medical oversight beyond Grace's increasingly erratic appearances and disappearances throughout the story, disappearing for a full month between April 21st and May 21st despite supposedly managing a critically ill man with aggressive brain cancer, which alone should have raised red flags, especially when she returned only to push radiation and chemotherapy with an oddly rehearsed sense of urgency, but even that fell away again as she vanished until July 3rd, when she claimed time was running out for Liam and began receiving strange, cryptic phone calls and messages that she would hide from everyone around her, and while the show hinted these messages were from her troubled daughters or a problematic ex-husband, fans began to speculate, what if they were from an accomplice, or worse, someone threatening to expose her if she didn't get the money in time, and then July 4th arrived with Finn confronting her stress and urging her to open up, and the next twist came on July 9th when Liam was shot by Luna Nozawa, rushed to the hospital again, and Grace immediately inserted herself into the case, though Finn took over surgery, something she clearly didn't like, and from there, she focused obsessively on Liam's condition, even while performing minor surgery on Sheila Carter's toe, and on July 10th and 14th, she repeatedly pushed everyone, including other doctors, out of Liam's room, insisting on privacy while he was still unconscious, and then, curiously, she manipulated Bridget into leaving, citing family obligations, which conveniently left Grace alone with Liam, where she began whispering to him, not like a doctor, but like someone frantic, desperate. Afraid to lose more than just a patient, afraid to lose her ticket out of whatever chaos she was running from, and it was on July 15th when everything began to snowball, with Grace eavesdropping on a vulnerable Bill Spencer as he sat by his unconscious son's bedside, making promises that he would pay anything, do anything, give anything to keep Liam alive. And that's when Grace saw her golden opportunity and proposed an experimental, expensive treatment that could save Liam's life, claiming she had a specialist who could perform it, and of course, Bill, grieving, desperate, rich, agreed without hesitation, unaware that this so-called treatment may have been nothing but theater, as on July 16th, Liam was transferred to a private clinic where Grace supposedly conducted this miracle procedure, and though she claimed she had flown in a world-renowned specialist, the man never touched Liam. Grace asked for the scalpel. Grace performed the incision, Grace declared success, and now, the cured Liam is back at Bill's estate, supervised by a home nurse, recovering from a surgery that may never have happened beyond a superficial incision on his scalp, because the reality is that we never saw any credible neurosurgeon, no second opinions, no legitimate tumor biopsies, just Grace and her erratic behavior, her sudden desperation, and her increasingly suspicious motives, especially when we consider Liam's prior history with concussions, dizziness, and memory lapses that could easily have explained away his symptoms, and if we take into account that Grace was the one prescribing his medications and controlling the narrative of his treatment, it's entirely possible she was manipulating his body and mind with off-label medications that induced cancer-like symptoms, weakness, lethargy, dizziness, while simultaneously showing falsified scans to Finn and Bridget that may have belonged to someone else entirely, someone with an actual tumor, with Liam's name photoshopped onto the report, because let's not forget, this is a woman with a history of deception to her association with Dr. Reese Buckingham, who once sold a baby to fund gambling debts. So is it really so far-fetched that Grace would fake a tumor to siphon money from a wealthy father desperate to save his son, and now the theory is that the man she brought in wasn't a doctor at all, just a convincing actor, and the entire operation was a sham, a con, a fraudulent display intended to rob Bill while appearing heroic, and if we circle back to the actual MRI that allegedly shows Liam cured, there's every possibility that it's a scan of Liam's brain taken after the bleed surgery with no evidence of cancer ever present. Or it's a faked report meant to cement the illusion, and what's even more chilling is the idea that Grace may have never intended to hurt Liam physically, only financially, believing that causing fake symptoms and then staging a miraculous recovery was a victimless crime if the patient ended up healthy and the payer could afford the scam. But crimes of deception don't end with good intentions, and now with Finn digging deeper, retracing records, matching scan IDs and timestamps, he's starting to unravel the truth, and Grace knows it, which is why she's more jittery than ever, why her hands shake as she fumbles her cell phone, hiding new messages, possibly planning to flee the country with whatever portion of Bill's money she hasn't already funneled into her escape plan, or worse, sent off to help Reese out of another jam, because make no mistake, this feels like a long con, one that evolved as the plot did, perhaps even starting as a genuine story that the writers pivoted midway to add intrigue, yet in universe, it reads as a scam born of opportunity, panic, and desperation, and the signs have always been there: the lack of consistent medical oversight, the vanishing oncology team, the absence of third-party verification, the miracle surgery performed by a woman not even licensed in that specialty, the dramatic and unexplained symptoms that vanished immediately post-surgery, and the fact that Grace's financial situation has never been explored until now, just in time for her to suddenly receive large sums of unverified payment from Bill Spencer's personal accounts. And while some fans may argue that this is simply Bolt's latest twist to keep viewers engaged, others see a deeper narrative brewing, one that puts medical ethics, emotional manipulation, and class disparity on full display, as Grace saw Liam not as a person but as an opportunity, a mark, whose wealthy father would do anything, pay anything, and believe anything to keep him alive. And now as the summer sweeps continue, the stage is set for a dramatic unraveling, where either Finn exposes the truth and Grace flees in disgrace, or Grace turns the tables once more, planting just enough doubt to escape unscathed. But one thing is certain: the moment Liam Spencer woke up without cancer and with no credible explanation beyond experimental miracle, the real drama began, and this time, it's not just about who loves whom, but who lied, who manipulated, and who will be held accountable when the truth finally explodes in the corridors of Forrester Creations and the halls of the Spencer estate, because secrets this Big don't stay buried forever, and if Grace Buckingham did fake Liam's cancer, it may go down not only as the most twisted scam in Bold and the Beautiful history but also the one that cost her everything, her career, her freedom, and the very redemption she once claimed to seek.